Hi everyone, my name is Renan Berto. I'm from Brazil. And first of all, I would like to thank the organization for making this conference happen and also thank the Aspen for the opportunity of being here presenting my paper. Today I will talk about learning, playing and observing an autoethnography study in Irish traditional session. This is part of my PhD research. I'm a PhD student at University of Campinas and I'm currently in a research internship at University College Dublin here in Ireland. According to Barry Foy's definition, Irish traditional sessions are gatherings of musicians to celebrate their common interest in music by playing it together in a relaxed, informal setting. So, basically, sessions are informal meetings that happen in pubs or restaurants where musicians, amateurs or professionals, get together to play and sing. As a newcomer in Dublin, I figure out that these general definitions may cover lots of possibilities, structures, and concepts of what is a session. Slow sessions for beginners, professional sessions, tourist shows, and sessions for specific instruments, a piper's night, for example. As a Brazilian musician observing this music making, my first impression was, whoa, they play so fast, mixing a lot of different tunes into the same set and under no apparent musical form or systematic logic for repetitions. Even so, they finish the last tune together. It's unbelievable. But other times, I had a strong feeling that I also could learn and play with them if, for example, I could use my musical notation as a guideline. Facing this reality, as well as the feelings it was awakening in myself, since September 2019 I've been exploring this variety of formats through fieldwork in Dublin sessions. By experiencing this live music, I became to perform three actions: learning as a beginner, playing as a musician, and observing as a researcher. Facing these multiple roles, I came to ask, what status can a researcher adopt in a field like this, which are in many ways similar yet different? The purpose of this paper is to analyze this experience intending to present the possibilities and perspectives of participating in Irish traditional sessions. To do so, my main methodology is based on autoethnography issues, elaborated during the fieldwork practice. A major advantage of this approach is that it enables to find data and, at the same time, allows personal reflections and critical thinking about the subject. In this sense, the data registers my shift from a following researcher, a total unknown of Irish traditional music, to a learning musician, trying to develop skills to participate in the session. In Music as Social Life, Thomas Turino proposes that music is a social activity that can be divided into two big fields: music in real time and recorded music. In the first instance, the sound is generated throughout live performances. In contrast, in the second, the sound is produced or manipulated by mechanical, digital, or virtual interfaces. It is essential to note that live performances presume an interaction between artists and audience. Here we have a fundamental division between two types of performances. The first one, known as participatory performances, aggregates musicians and audience, being that this interaction must result in instant contributions to the sound production. In the second one, named the presentational performance, the audience keeps a certain distance from the musicians, holding the participation in specific moments, for example, clapping at the end of each tune, thus representing a minimal contribution to the sound production. In spite of these characteristics, presentational performance and participatory performances have meanings that can be related, interacting, and influencing each other, or even disagreeing in terms of structure and conception. It's worth noting that Turino's significant contribution is in on prioritizing the process in music making, evaluating how music is made and conceived by artists and audience. In this sense, one could agree that ethnography studies can demonstrate how these productions happen in their cultural context. Furthermore, once possibilities of participation permeate this theory, it seems natural that this ethnographic study should get close, involved, and engaged within the field. The concept of autoethnography employed here is based on the proposal of Caroline Ellis, Tom Adams, and Arthur Boschner, that is, an approach to research and writing that seeks to describe and systematically analyze, that's the graph, personal experience, that's the auto, in order to understand a cultural experience, that's the ethno. Some fundamentals about this approach are outlined in the book Autoethnography as Method, in which Hao-Eng Shan points that an autoethnography should be ethnographic in its methodological orientation, cultural in its interpretative orientation, and autobiographical in its content orientation. Now I will present 4 examples of this fieldwork registered through autoethnographic approach. The first one is the Balaclavas group. I first enjoyed this group on November 6. Some weeks before, I had been watching a regular session at the Cobblestone and talked with a bartender. He told me, if you are looking for slow sessions, look for Balaclavas at the Cobblestone webpage for more information. They meet weekly in our back room. A quick search showed me some contacts and I wrote, asking for details about the meeting. Someone responded with the general information, from 7 to 9 every Wednesday. Based on my previous experience watching sessions, I was expecting a small group, something like 6 people. However, when I arrived, I had a surprise. Approximately 20 people were playing different instruments, basically fiddle, toniso, Irish flute, concertina, banjo, boodle, accordion, and even a violoncello. They were seated in front of the stage, where a fiddle player, a female approximately 13 years, was speaking about repetitions and format of the next tune. At the back of the stage, there was a big screen projecting ABC notation of that tune. I thought, it's like a class. The dynamic was quite simple. The teacher understood the fiddle player, gave some details about the tune projected on the big screen. This initial explanation was directed to the form and the main key. So she played one part of the tune and after that everyone repeated. I observed the situation and some tunes after I thought, it's not so difficult, why not enjoy? So I took a chair, sat down, and warmed my tin whistle to play. Even without knowing most of the repertoire, it was possible to follow the ABC notation on the big screen, and after some repetitions I could understand the rhythm. I thought, that could be one good reason for repeating the tunes over and over, so the newcomers can be familiarized with it. By looking around, I could see male and female, from teenagers to seniors, everyone mixed trying to follow the tune. Once in a while, new people entered in the room, in some cases just for observing, in others to play. In this sense, it was hard to distinguish the audience because almost everyone was playing. At the end of the session, I spoke with the teacher. I presented myself and told her how I had enjoyed that experience. She thanked and encouraged me to use their website to practice the tunes. She said, every reel we played today is available on our site. There you will find the notation as well as some recordings. My second example, it will be the Kyoto's Monkstall session. And my first experience was in 24th of September. This day I was the only audience present at the basement of the Georgios building, which also houses a small bar. So I sat down near the counter and stayed there for almost 2 hours just listening. It is also a learning group, but different the balaclavas, they don't have big screen projecting tunes, and instead they use the traditional musical notation present in a book called Fall in Season. A man named Dennis was responsible for conducting the practice. He was playing fiddle and he asked each one of the participants what tune they would like to play. There were 8 participants, 4 were playing fiddle, and the rest were playing mandolin, concertina, banjo, and button accordion. The age range was over 16 years. Soon I realized that the most expert musicians, three ladies, were sitting together, and they could play almost everything that was chosen. But at the same time, they weren't angry with the others who probably were beginners or newcomers. Even with this friendly and easygoing atmosphere, I wasn't comfortable to play with them. At the end of the session, I went to talk with Dennis and he asked me, "Did you enjoy the session?" "Oh, of course. I am a musician too, and I'm learning the whistle." He seemed to like my presence and told me to bring the instrument next week to play with them. Between October and December, I played at this session. Every week was the same setting. Dennis asked each one of the participants to choose a page from the book, and we tried to play together. My third example is the Peterborough Saturday sessions. And on September 28, my first impression was great. I think I know some of these players. Maybe because they are the same people at the last week and the week before that. And look, five of them are seated in the same spots as they were seated in the last 2 weeks. About 10 musicians were playing guitar, fiddle, mandolin, concertina, and whistle. One of the guitar players had told me last week, "You will not learn how to play Irish music if you just practice locked in your room." Even with this advice, I wasn't comfortable to take a seat and play. The musicians were mixing instrumental tunes and songs. Thinking about the dynamics of participation, the presence of singers surprised me a lot. Some of them were part of the audience, and suddenly they started to sing. Sometimes even from where they were sitting, without getting close to the musician's table. October 12th. During the last 2 weeks, I studied two sets of tunes to play at Peterborough's. So I left my home determined to play. It would be my first participation in a regular session, a shift between observing as a researcher to effectively participating as a musician. Arriving in the pub, I took the same place as ever as part of the audience, but just a few minutes in these situations, and the leader of the group told me, "Hey, you, are you a musician, isn't?" "Yes, sir, I am." "So, sit here and play with us." Immediately, the musicians opened the space and I took one extra chair for me. I sat down and shook the hands of those who were close to me. I took my whistle, warmed it, and tried to follow the tunes, most of which I had never heard before. Some tunes were fast, and in others I couldn't identify who was playing the main melody and who were making variations. I saw on the other side of the table a lady with the whistle, and I tried to follow her hands. This worked in some instances, mainly in the slower tunes. Suddenly, I realized that I could play my set of tunes. I played the first notes, and one of the whistle players looked at me and started to play along. I started at a regular tempo, but during the first A, each measure was getting quicker than the previous. On the second B, the tempo was breakneck, and I was afraid I couldn't play. But other musicians were playing too, and I was sure that even if I stopped, they would continue. At the final bars of this tune, I began to think of the notes that started the next tune, and so at the end of the first tune, I played the second one. Other musicians just heard the first notes and started to play with me. The same happened in the transition between the second and the third tune. A few hours later, I tried to plan my second set, and surprisingly, what happened was similar to the first one, including the variation of tempo. My last example will be the Club Conhanagale. As soon as I went down the stairs, I could hear the music. When I entered, I saw two guys, flute and guitar, playing in a small room, but I could hear something else, and I thought someone left the radio on. When I went to another room, I discovered a vast session with more than 10 young musicians with approximately 20 years old. There were more fiddle players than any other instruments, and some players changed the instruments during the performances. From fiddle to whistle, from fiddle to concertina, from fiddle to banjo, from guitar to boron. Curiously, everyone seemed to play the whistle. Still, nobody played only this instrument through the session, just for one or another tune. It was an instrumental session. At least, I didn't hear any songs that day. The musicians were playing each tune with impressive dexterity and also at a very fast tempo. Lots of participants were without their own instrument, but when they wanted to play, this request was done with simple gestures, waving their hands, raising the arm, and or shaking gently the head up and down. For 2 months, I followed this group of young instrumentalists playing. In some specific situations, I heard some songs, but singing wasn't the main activity. As it happens at Peterbrow's, some participants weren't an original part of the central core. Still, once they had the skills to play, they could sit down and participate. Over time, I could recognize some tunes, but I wasn't able to participate because I couldn't play at the tempo they were playing. Furthermore, in contrast to the Peterball sessions, I didn't receive any invitation to play. I also did not notice a real possibility of an approach, perhaps because of my age difference, perhaps because I didn't take the initiative of asking to play. Given these brief reports, I aimed to demonstrate how 4 sessions can manage different meanings related to participation. The first 2 sessions I presented are usually classified as slow sessions. They are designed for beginner instrumentalists and the tempo of the tunes is slower than the normal situations. They are the more participative sessions that I observed and at the same time the least presentational. At this point, it's worth noting that my participation at Peterbrow's session was a process. Initially, I went to this pub and a few times I just watched. Then I talked with some musicians. In parallel with these activities, I studied at home until I had memorized 2 sets of tunes on the whistle. Finally, I'm attempting to understand the student sessions as the most presentational performance. I'm not affirming that this is an exclusively presentational performance. Actually, participation was present all the time, and many musicians were initially part of the audience, and some people in the audience were initially musicians, which for some reason weren't playing anymore. But my point here is that every participant had a high level of performances. They played the tunes at a fast tempo with precise notes and almost always with perfect pitch. These skills take years to acquire and learn. The whole context of the sessions seems to support and appreciate this kind of competence. Back to my theoretical and methodological approaches, I understand the slow sessions as spaces where I could participate by playing my tin whistle, being that on balaclavas this participation was instant. In contrast, in the regular sessions, my participation was part of a process that resulted in my invitation to play. Finally, on the student session, I wasn't ready to play, so I just kept my role as researcher and observer. By looking at these differences, my final argument is to increase Turino's theory with possibilities of classifications based on empirical observations and autoethnographic reflections. Thank you very much for your attention.